And the language from Richard Marles today was clear cut on that. He said, actually it surprised me to an extent, but then when you think about it and the way you put it, it does make sense. He said there is no nation that we are more aligned with strategically than Japan. So that relationship is as close as it could be, Greg.
That's right. And of course, there's a wonderful cognitive dissonance here between everything that Prime Minister Albanese said on his love in Beijing with what we're doing today. And we see a Chinese national charged with foreign interference in Australia. And, you know, ASIO will tell anybody who listened to them that the Chinese are the chief, purveyors of foreign espionage and cyber attack and so forth on Australia. And Japan is completely focused on the military threat from Beijing. One reason their military equipment is so relevant to us is that it is all designed with countering Beijing in mind. Now, you were right, Kieran, to say they haven't focused on defence exports previously, but their own defence equipment is very capable. Japan is a very capable military power. It has its new generation conventional submarines. They're extremely formidable. It's right across everything about robotics and so on. The other thing is a combination of sort of silly climate policies and Chinese strategic pricing has denuded both the United States and Western Europe of their manufacturing capabilities. The two parts of the Western alliance which still make things in very big volume are Japan and Korea. They make ships and they make submarines, they make everything else. Now, it's absolutely smart for the United States and Australia to encourage Japan in persisting in that industrial production as part of the Western alliance. I mean, I think everything Marles has said on this has been very sound, and the Albanese government is a bit like what Jim Callaghan said of the Americans. You know, they will follow good policy, but only after they've exhausted all the other alternatives. But this today is good policy.
I want to ask you about your piece in The Australian today on net zero. You touched on it briefly in that answer there, I think, but you point out that this debate within the coalition is not unique among centre-right parties around the world.
Yeah, so Kieran, net zero is just a fantasy. It's just not reality. And of course, you say that in Australia and you get dismissed as a crank. But The Economist magazine, which is the sort of very epitome of Davos man and globalism and so on, this week has a big story saying, well, net zero is just not going to happen. It just isn't going to happen. There's a very big analytical piece in the journal Foreign Affairs saying the same thing. Global carbon emissions have gone up quite radically between 2020 and 2023. 2024, we had more energy derived from coal than we have in the history of the human race. Fossil fuels still make up well over 80% of primary energy. It's just not happening. Now, that's not to say you deny climate change or anything, but all the centre-right parties around the English-speaking world have abandoned net zero by 2050 as a hard target. The Trump has, obviously, the British Conservatives have, and so has Nigel Farage, who is leading by miles in the polls. The Canadian Conservatives did, and they forced the Canadian Liberal government to abolish carbon taxes. And the New Zealand government retains the notional commitment, but it has reversed all of Jacinda Ardern's climate policies. And the problem in Australia is, especially the ABC, but the progressive class generally, just won't let these facts into the debate. You know, China is massively increasing its coal-fired power capabilities. It approved more coal-fired power stations in 2024 than it has in 10 years. Well, it's just simply not true. It's not plausible. It just doesn't exist in the real world to say China is heading towards net zero, nor India. All of the big increase in emissions is happening in the developing world, and the developing world is going to carbonise before it ever decarbonises. Therefore, the question for Australia is, yes, we should reduce emissions. How can we do that at minimum cost and without destroying the Australian economy? And the idea that it's the coalition's climate wars which have caused the confusion, the problem is that these elementary facts are never allowed into the debate. I mean, there was a debate on Insiders a week or two ago about China decarbonising its steel industry. Well, that is just a fantasy. I mean, a Chinese ministry spokesman might say that, but it's absurd for those sort of fantasies to dominate the Australian debate. Now, the coalition has not fought on this issue for a long time. Scott Morrison accepted net zero as a target, although he never intended to implement it. And Australia now will need to have a shuddering debate about this, because we are not going to hit net zero, neither is anybody else, and eventually reality will reassert itself.